going, everyone, and welcome to the Talk Sports Show with Alec Pecano. And let's get right to here's my college basketball top 25 this week. At number 25, I have Colorado. They've had a really good year so far in basketball. They've been playing really good of late, and it is based on how the teams play. At number 24, I have Washington State. They beat Arizona over the weekend in basketball, and I think they've been playing really good. And as you know, most of you, I do watch a lot of basketball. At number 23, South Carolina. They're another team that's been playing really good this year, and I love how they've been playing, and it's been surprising that they've been this good. Hold up. And a little malfunction. That's fine. Number 22, George Washington. George Washington has stayed in the rankings. Wake Forest was originally supposed to be here, but George Washington survives another week in the rankings. At 21 is another team that pulled an upset this week, Iowa State. Iowa State is in the rankings for the first time this year. At number 20, they were bumped down one spot because of their performance against in conference during the week, FAU. They're at number 20. I still like how they're playing, but it's all about how you finish the season. Number 19, Memphis. They're another team that's been playing really good as of late. And I love how Memphis has been playing. And I think they can rise. Welcome back to the rankings at number 18, North Florida. They have been playing really good over the last couple of weeks. And again, like I said, this is done based on how the teams play. If you don't agree with it, you don't have to. It's all based on how I feel the teams play. And so that is why North Florida's in here. Number 17, South Florida. You will see Memphis and South Florida in another segment later on in the show. But South Florida's another team that's been playing really well. And they have a guy that's going to get my player of the week, which you will see in a little bit. And number 16, Arizona State. They're another team that pulled an upset this week. And they've also been playing really well over the last few weeks in basketball. Number 15, Arizona. Yeah, Arizona. The fall of Arizona has been real. They started the year at number 4. Then they were at number 1 for a little bit. Then they've tapered off down to being, I wouldn't say a bad team, but they're not a top 10 team. Number 14, Ohio State. Now, they played good against Wisconsin last week, but I don't see an avenue. I see possibility for Ohio State to get back up into the top 10 if they keep winning. And you may see them in a segment later on in the show to deal with big-time conference games. They do have a big conference game today against a Michigan team that is not particularly good in basketball. At number 13, Kentucky. And Kentucky is here because they lost in overtime to Texas A&M. And A&M is not particularly that good. And they're actually, A&M is really good at basketball. And there's a couple teams that you don't see them in the rankings this week. That doesn't mean they won't be in there next week, because I update these rankings every week. Number 12, Auburn. Bruce Pearl has his Auburn basketball team playing really well. I love how they've been playing the last couple weeks. And that is why they're at number 12. Number 11, Ole Miss, another S. And Ole Miss has been, I didn't expect him to be this good in basketball this year. I expected him to be halfway decent. But, like I said, I didn't expect it to be this good, and they actually are. And Ole Miss, if they keep winning, they can move into the top 10. At number 10, Baylor. Baylor's another team that's been hovering around the 10 to 15 range in my rankings. But again, if they keep on winning, they're another team that can find themselves easily inside the top 10. At number 9, yes, I know Houston was number 2 last week, but they lost to an unranked team this week. And if you lose to an unranked team that has more losses than you, I punish you and move you down a lot of spots. And I don't go easy. And that's what happened with Houston. Houston is now number 9. But I still do like Calvin Sampson, and I think that Houston will be okay. And I think Houston can get back into the top 8 if they keep winning and teams in front of them lose. Speaking of the top 8, number 8, Dayton. Dayton's a team that's been playing really good as of recently. And I love how they've been playing. And it's only fair to think that Dayton, they haven't reached their full potential yet. They could be a top 5 team if they just keep winning. Number 7. This is where it gets interesting, ladies and gentlemen. The fact that my whole top from 7 to 1 has changed. At number 7, Indiana. Yes, you see Indiana's in there at 7. And I like Indiana a lot. And I think Indiana is another team that hasn't reached its full potential yet in terms of being really, really good. Number 6, Wisconsin. Greg Gard has his Badgers playing extremely well. At number 5, they moved up 1 spot. North Carolina. R.J. Davis is him. And you may see Mr. Davis in the next segment. Number 4, UConn. I have to start giving UConn respect. I've been doubting them this whole season, and now all of a sudden they've played really well. And I like how they've been playing. As you notice, number 3, Purdue. They only got moved out 2 spots because they won on they lost to Nebraska, an unranked team, and I was debating whether to put Nebraska in the rankings. If they keep winning and teams that are in the rankings lose, you will see Nebraska in the rankings. Number 2. Oh, well, wait. Back to 3. So Purdue. I like Zach Edey a lot, and you might see him in the next segment. Number 2, Kansas. Kansas, I think, in my opinion, is the favorite to win the Big 12. And at number 1, Duke. John Shaw, and ignore my little typo I had with Duke. I don't know what I was doing before the show. I must have went in and accidentally went into this Google slide and changed Duke and put D-U-K-D-E. But it's supposed to say Duke. I like how John Shire and Duke have been playing, and they're starting to garner some of my attention, and I like how they've been playing. Here's my conference players of the week from the AAC. Yet another South Florida Bowl. It will be Kason Pryor from South Florida. Okay, if you haven't turned on the South Florida game and watched the South Florida game yet, I highly recommend you do, and you keep your eye on number 11 for USF. That is Kason Pryor. The kid is a walking bucket. He had, against Rice, he had 29 points, 5 assists, 4 blocks, 2 steals. He's a stats, as they say, as us content creators in basketball say, he's a stat sheet stuffer. He stuffs the stat sheet with assists, points, rebounds, and blocks. And he can also take charges. He's not afraid to stand in the lane and take a charge. That is why he's the conference player of the week for me in the AAC, the Big Ten. I just talked about this guy's team a minute ago. It is Zach Edey from Purdue. Edey could have gone to the NBA, and I would have been happy with that as an Ohio State fan, but he came back, and he hasn't missed a step with Purdue. He is the conference player of the week in the Big Ten. In the ACC, correction, I just said you might hear his name in the conference player of the week. It is R.J. Davis from North Carolina. And with R.J. Davis, I absolutely love how North Carolina's been playing, and especially R.J. Davis. R.J. Davis is one of the best guards in the ACC. The A-Sun player of the week, and no, it's not another UNF Osprey. It is Terrell Burden from Kennesaw State. If you haven't watched any mid-major basketball, I highly recommend it because there are some good mid-major teams in college basketball. One of them being Kennesaw State in the A-Sun. And Terrell Burton had a couple big games last week. And one of them, I think he hit the game winner to help Kennesaw State win. And the Big 12 player of the week is Kansas Ford Hunter Dickinson. If the last name Dickinson sounds familiar, that is because this Hunter Dickinson was at Michigan last year. Then he jumped in the portal before this year and transferred to Kansas. And Hunter Dickinson has been playing extremely good over the first couple months of the season. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's the Big 12 player of the year. And now we're going to review the wild card games from Saturday and Sunday. And so, the first game on Saturday was Houston and Cleveland with the Texans and the Browns. And I'm sorry for those of you that picked the Browns to win. They got absolutely hammered. And what I think is going to happen is I think Baltimore fans, close your ears. I think the Texans are going to have to play. No, the Texans might have to go to Kansas City. And it might be Buffalo and Baltimore. And if that's the case, I think Baltimore wins. But Houston, they have been really good this year. Houston, the Texans. I don't think anybody, including me, had them making the playoffs and winning a playoff game. But that just shows you that you could be completely wrong on a team like I was. But CJ Stroud, I think everybody needs to be taking CJ Stroud more serious than they already are. He is the real deal. CJ Stroud. So, and the Texans won 45-14 to move on to the next round. Which wasn't very surprising. Kansas City and Miami. I picked the Chiefs to win, and I hope y'all did too. They only gave up 7 points the entire game. Kansas City did. But take into account, it was -4 degrees, and I talked about that on the show last week when I was doing the picks for Wild Card Weekend. But Kansas City, they still look vulnerable to me, which means I think they could lose within the next 2 rounds to somebody. I don't know who it's going to be, but I think they could lose within the next 2 rounds and miss out on the Super Bowl. Now, the game that really surprised me was Green Bay and Dallas. I thought Dallas was going to just run all over Green Bay, throw the ball, and win by 20. Boy, was I wrong. You know what? Credit where it's due. Jordan Love, I think, is going to be the next really good quarterback for the Packers. And you can either agree or disagree with me on that down below in the comments section. And if you're enjoying the video, please leave a thumbs up. But Dallas, and I will talk about this. I will talk about who I think the Cowboys head coach will be going into next year on Friday's show, which is going to be an extended show. It's normally an hour. I might try to go an hour and 20 minutes on Friday. But back to Dallas. I wasn't expecting Dallas the amount of points they did. But take into account, the Cowboys, they're not very good in the playoffs. But that doesn't mean, I'm going to say this right now. I don't think McCarthy's going to be the Cowboys coach next year. That's all I'm going to say, is I don't think McCarthy's going to be back as the Cowboys coach next year. I think we'll have a new head coach, and stay tuned for a future video on who I think that head coach will be for the Cowboys. But, and then the Sunday night game, the Lions and Rams, that was, I think, in my opinion, that was the best so far, because there's 2 games today that I will be previewing here in a minute. But I think the Lions and Rams was the best playoff game so far this year in the wild card round. It was a close game, 24-23. If you took Detroit to win, good job. But we did, however, we didn't get the cover on the point spread. which neither of our cover picks worked this week. We went 0-2. Right now we sit at 4-3 with a chance to go 6-3 if the Buccaneers upset. Well, no. Yeah, 6-3 because we have the Buccaneers at an upset. So if they upset Philly tonight, that's 5-3. 6-3 would be if the Buccaneers win, and it's 7-3 would be if the Bills win. So we still have a chance to go over 500 on Wild Card Weekend. But I will be previewing both the Wild Card games today here in a second. But back to the Lions and the Rams. I tell you, as a Bucs fan, if we win, I don't think we're beating Detroit. I don't think we're beating Detroit because the game will be in Detroit, and that crowd last night was electric for the Lions. Very electric, and I am horrified to see the Bucs go in there and play in a playoff game with that kind of atmosphere. But the first things first, the Bucs need to get through Philly. And speaking of that, I will be previewing the Buccaneers-Eagles game. So, if you didn't know, the Buccaneers earlier in the season played the Eagles and lost. And they got bludgeoned on the ground. And the Eagles were fully healthy. Tonight, the Eagles will be without A.J. Brown. He is out with an injury, with a knee injury. And I think, here's what I'm going to say. Here's my keys to victory. For the Buccaneers tonight. One, you need to limit Devontae Smith. Keep him, because they're going to target him. The Eagles are going to target him and Goddard the entire game because they don't have A.J. Brown, and I don't know if they trust Quez Watkins or any of the other receivers that are going to have to step up with A.J. Brown not playing. So you got to limit Devontae Smith. I'm going to say keep him under 100 yards receiving, and if you can, also hold him out of the end zone. Number two, and this is a big one. This is what hurt the Buccaneers when they played Philly earlier in the year. Turnovers. Do not, and I repeat, Tampa Bay, do not turn the ball over. You turn the ball over, you're going to lose. I'm going to say no turnovers or no turnovers, but on the other side of the ball on defense, force turnovers. Don't give up the ball. Take the ball away and give your offense short field. Because we know what Baker Mayfield's capable of. He can have a big game. Number three, contain Jalen Hurts. You know for a fact and a half that the Eagles are going to have designed QB runs for Jalen Hurts. In Tampa Bay, you need to have a containment guy. You need to have somebody spying on Hurts. So if he decides he wants to run, you have somebody there to watch him and keep him inside the pocket and keep him from running the ball. And number four, get Mike Evans the ball early and often. And get all your receivers involved early and often. And have some big explosive plays planned for this game because it's a playoff game. We saw what happened yesterday with Dallas when they got down big. They had to run the ball, and Tampa Bay, you don't want to fall into that same hole. You don't want to have to run the ball consistently because that Eagles front seven is vicious. It is intimidating. Here is my projected stat line for Baker Mayfield. I think he goes 40 of 44 for 368 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. The touchdowns go 2 to Mike Evans, and Mike Evans has around 8 or 9 catches for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin has 6 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, so that's 3 touchdowns. And then Rachaad White has 40 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown, as well as probably around 80 to 85 yards rushing and maybe a rushing touchdown. And so now on the Eagles side, what you got to do is if you're the Eagles and you want to win this game without A.J. Brown, because I tell you both sides, I don't just give the Bucs the side of the team I want to win. So Eagles, if you want to win, what you got to do, contain Baker Mayfield, keep him under 100 yards passing, keep Mike Evans under 100 yards receiving, and I would say bracket cover Mike Evans and make the other receivers, Trey Palmer and Chris Godwin and K. Dotton, beat you. Limit our rushing attack and keep Rachaad White under 100 combined scrimmage yards. So that would be probably 65 rushing yards and like 25 yards receiving. And if you can do that, I think you can beat Tampa Bay. And same thing what I said about the Bucs. If you want to win Philly, don't turn the ball over. But on defense, the opposite. Force turnovers. So it goes both ways. Defensively, force turnovers. Offensively, don't turn the ball over. And I think this is going to be the second best game of Wild Card Weekend. I think the Buccaneers end up winning. I'm going to say 35-28 is the final. Preview Steelers and Bills wildcard game is next. So this game was supposed to be yesterday, but if you didn't see the news, there was a really, really bad snowstorm in Buffalo, so they had to move the game to today. And I'm going to say something before I go over my thoughts and opinions on the game. Dolphins fans, please, y'all need to stop complaining about. I understand you played in really, really cold weather against Kansas City, but you can't be calling the Bills soft for not playing last night, for not playing yesterday, when they had 60-plus mile-an-hour winds and 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground. And it's not safe to play in 60-plus mile-an-hour winds. You could try to play in that kind of weather, but I don't think it's going to work. So anyway, here's my preview. First, I'm going to give you the Steelers side of it and how they can pull the upset here and end Buffalo's season. What they have to do is they have to limit Josh Allen running the ball. They have to limit the run game completely for Buffalo, which is not very easy to do because if you limit Josh Allen, he's just going to turn around and hand it off to James Cook. But if you're the Steelers, what I would do is I would stack the box with 7 or 8 guys each play and make Buffalo have to beat me by throwing the ball. And Buffalo does not have its deep threat receiver in Gabe Davis. He is out with an injury. So it's going to be Stephon Diggs, Khalil Shakir, and somebody else. But I think if the Steelers can limit Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. So those are 4 receivers that Pittsburgh needs to keep an eye on? Well, Knox mostly for blocking, but Kincaid, Shakir, Diggs, and if I'm missing anybody else, please comment it down below. But if Pittsburgh could make Buffalo one-dimensional and keep them from running the ball every single play to chew the clock, I think Pittsburgh could stick around in the game and maybe pull the upset. So now for Pittsburgh on the offensive side of the ball. If you don't know, Mason Rudolph is starting because Mitch Trubisky's butt cheeks and Kenny Pickett's still hurt. But they said he's not going to play, but I venture to bet next year he would still be their starter. But if Pittsburgh wants to win, what they got to do is they got to get the big plays. And I think both their running backs may have a decent game. I think Najee Harris goes for like 95 to 98 yards rushing. And then you have Jaylen Warren, who, in my opinion, he's the next. And there's going to be a lot of people that probably agree with me. He's probably the next Austin Eckler. But I think Jaylen Warren has like 65 yards rushing and 50 to 65 yards receiving. And then you get to the passing game. You got to get your tight end involved early. Pat Freiermuth. You got to get Muth involved early. And if you can get him with the dump off passes, you might be in good shape. And then you got to get your receivers, Pickens, Allen Robinson, Deontay Johnson. You got to get all of them involved in the game too. Because if Buffalo gets you to be one-dimensional and just if they stack the box because they know you're going to run the ball, if they stack the box every single play, they're going to force you to throw the ball and become one-dimensional. And I don't know if you want that. You want to be in this game, but and the same thing I said about the Buccaneers. Steelers on offense, no turnovers. If you want to pull the upset, and on defense, take the ball away from Josh Allen because he has been known to turn the ball over. But now to the Buffalo side of things. Buffalo, if you want to win and avoid the upset, I'm going to give you two big keys. One, you got to get Stephon Diggs involved early in the game. Don't let Pittsburgh's going to try to bracket cover him with a corner and then a safety over the top. So here's what I do. I'd set up a few screen passes for Stephon Diggs to get him rolling. And then if the safeties and corners pinch up, I'd go for a deep shot with Khalil Shakir. And don't let Pittsburgh make you one-dimensional where you're lining up every play and running the ball. If you can do that, and then on defense, limit George Pickens. Keep him under 100 yards receiving. Because you know Pittsburgh's going to throw the ball to him all the time, almost all the time. So if you can limit him and you cannot be one-dimensional on offense, you will probably win this game. And I think Buffalo wins 38-28. So I think they win by 10. And now here's some good conference games to watch this week in college basketball. In the A-Sun, on Thursday night at 7 p.m., we have North Florida, Kennesaw State at number 18, North Florida. at 7 o'clock. Tuesday night at 9, we have number 2 Kansas. And I'm going to go back to this Kennesaw State North Florida game. I know it says 25. That's supposed to say 18. Because I had North Florida in my original rankings at 25, but they are at 18. So ignore the 25 and pretend that's 18. But I think this is going to be another classically good game in the A-Sun. And I think you may see it on my college basketball show on Friday. But I think North Florida ends up winning tomorrow night. Tuesday night, we've got number 2 Kansas at Oklahoma State at 9 o'clock. And I think this is going to be a really good game in the Big 12. And I think there's a chance this might be an upset. Kansas State. Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State might pull the upset here against Kansas. In the Big 10, we've got number 14, Ohio State at home against Penn State. And this is a Saturday 12 o'clock tip-off. Ohio State and Penn State. And then in the AAC Thursday night, 7 p.m., we have South Florida, number 17 in my rankings, and number 19 in my rankings, Memphis. This is a conference game in the AAC, a big-time conference game. And who do I think wins? You'll just have to wait and see. Now, the next thing I'm gonna cover is, if you didn't hear, Jedd Fisch is the new head coach at Washington. Yes, he was at Arizona last year, and I think because if you didn't also hear, Kalen DeBoer is the new head coach at Alabama. So, Jedd Fisch coming over to Washington. I think this is a great move for Jedd Fisch. Because I did like him at Arizona, but I felt like he wasn't staying there much longer because of the fact that Arizona was going to the Big 12. And if somebody gave him a lot of money, Jedd Fisch was going to leave and go to that school, and that school ended up being Washington. And like I said, I like this move for Washington because it's a really good head coach. And watch out. The transfer portal is going to open back up for Arizona, and I bet you a bunch of their kids are going to jump in the portal and go to Washington, where Jedd Fisch is going. And so, look at it this way. I give this an A+ higher. Now the question is, who's the next head coach at Arizona? And I will go over that in another future video. But I think this is a really good hire for Washington. I mean, I might give you a little hint as to who I think the next head coach could be at Arizona. Maybe they go after Rich Rodriguez. I can tell you who it's not going to be. They're not going to go after Gronk. They're not going to go after Jerry Kill. They could try to go after Urban Meyer, but they would have to pay him a lot of money. And from what I've heard, Arizona isn't very rich with their athletic department and football. So I think that Jedd Fisch in Washington, I think they will still compete really good in the Big Ten. And now, should the Buccaneers re-sign Baker Mayfield? And I also want y'all to chime in down in the comments down below. of this video and tell me what you think the Buccaneers should do with Baker Mayfield. Should they re-sign him or should they draft a quarterback? I'm going to give you two scenarios. So, the first one is if the Buccaneers re-sign Baker Mayfield. If the Bucs re-sign Baker Mayfield, do they still have enough money to re-sign Antoine Winfield, Lavonte David, Mike Evans, Devin White if they want to? And then you have to think about Tristan Wirfs will be needing a new contract next season. So if you re-sign Baker, do you have enough money to re-sign all those other guys? In scenario 2, if you let Baker walk, I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of suitors out there for Baker Mayfield. And I'm leaning toward option 1, re-signing him. Because if you let him go, you're going to have to draft a quarterback. And you're not going to have a top 5 pick. You're going to be in the 20s, depending on whether you win in the first round, the wild card round, or lose. And unless you want to invest some of your future picks to move up into the top 10 to get a quarterback, I think the best course of action here is re-signing Baker Mayfield and not letting him hit free agency. Here's the contract I would give Baker Mayfield. I give him a 3-year deal, kind of like what the Seahawks gave Geno Smith after he had a good year. So 3 years with around 14 to 16 million dollars, with like 12 or 13 of it guaranteed, and bonus incentives in the contract for, like, if he throws 40 touchdowns, he gets a bonus of X amount of dollars. If he plays a certain amount of games, he gets a roster bonus. Something along those lines. Because I don't mind re-signing Baker Mayfield. And then Mike Evans, if you could re-sign him, give him like give him what you gave Godwin, like 3 years, 26 or $27 million. With a bunch of money guaranteed. So then you got Evans re-signed. Here's what I would do with Lavonte David and Devin White. I would re-sign Lavonte David to like a 1 or 2 year deal worth around $6 or $7 million, if he'll take that, because it's a discount. And I would let Devin White go. I'd let him walk. Even though I just said to maybe re-sign him a minute ago, I'd let him walk and give one of the younger linebackers a chance to start next year. And then the big one, the big fish, Antoine Winfield Jr. There is absolutely zero chance I am letting Antoine Winfield leave the Buccaneers. Blazers, if you're listening to this video, do not let Antoine Winfield hit free agency, because you will not see him in a Bucs uniform if he does. He will go somewhere else. What I would do with Winfield is I would franchise him, and this goes for you too, Jason Light. I would franchise tag Antoine Winfield and then try to work out a long-term deal with him during the offseason. And that is what I would do with the Buccaneers. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I do offer memberships, and they are very money friendly. They are not too expensive. I highly recommend getting them because there's some neat perks you get with them. One of the perks you get is a meet and greet with me, and I will be doing meetups in the next few months, so be watching out for a community post on when the first meetup will be with me, the host of the Talk Sports Show, Alec Pecano. And also, if you didn't see the post from last night on my community poll, the Discord and Patreon. I highly recommend joining both so we can start a community on both of those. They are both free to join, but the Patreon, if you want to join me, the paid version of the Patreon, it's $4 a month. The Discord is completely free, and it's where we can chat outside of YouTube. We can also chat in the community polls that I put up, but outside of YouTube, if you want to chat, join up the Discord and the Patreon. And ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for the Talk Sports Show today. I will see you back here with another episode of the Talk Sports Show on Wednesday as the new schedule for me starts for YouTube this week. So tomorrow you will be seeing, I'm hoping around 9 o'clock in the morning, Sharks franchise. And then tomorrow night at 10 p.m., you will be seeing Falcons franchise season 2 preseason with me. But till tomorrow night, I will see y'all later. Peace.